Folake Shoga, and I'm here today to introduce Clarice Lima, whose performance Woods opens IBT Wildness. So Clarice, Woods is part of a trilogy which includes Skirt was the first one, and in that performance a woman is in sight in a landscape and she becomes a tree. Her body and her garb becomes a tree. This woman is sighted upside down with her legs in the air, and from this grew the three performances, yes?
Yes.
So they are skirt, then trees. What's the difference between skirt and trees?
Yeah, they are all part of this trilogy that I started in 2009 actually,
2009.
together with a photographer, a friend of mine, Patricia Araújo. She's from Brazil as well. And I was very moved by this image of people upside down. And then we developed this costume together, and we asked for her grandmother to sew. And her grandmother couldn't understand which kind of skirt I was talking about. And then I was in the headstand. And then she said, now I can see what you mean. And her grandmother made these first skirts. We bought the fabrics. And we went to different places of the city to make a picture. So we were really thinking about this performance for pictures, for photography. So we were very much thinking about the city as a background and to have this image. And actually this work we performed and we made in São Paulo, Brasília, Rio de Janeiro and Fortaleza. We made in 4 different cities. And the pictures were shown in galleries and exhibitions, but was more direct to visual art contexts. It was not as a live performance thing. It was very much about the photography. And then a year later, I was in a residency project, a dance residency project, that I wanted to develop this image into a performance art, in a dance performance. And it was a big challenge, but actually the picture brought me in a place that I was very curious, because people were asking a lot of questions when I was performing. But for the picture, but the performance would last only the time of the picture. I was there and I said like, yeah, are you done? Did you get it, the picture? And then I would go out and then see and look to the things. And when I wanted to transform this image, this picture into a performance, I started to apply principles of dance related to space and time into this image. So to make the time more complex, I thought, well, maybe the time and the resistance of the body is a cue that the performance would last as long as the body can resist in this upside down position. So then I understood a little bit more the relationship with time and the body. But then to have more complex space, I invite some friends and said, come on, join me. And with more people, the space became more complex, but also the dramaturgy started to appear, because each person would resist for a certain time that could not be predictable. I mean, could be predictable, but I really like the unpredictable that can happen from this, that people sometimes they would lose balance, and even people like is very good in headstands. Sometimes in Brazil it's very chaotic, so people would pass and they just do like this and then they'll fall. And all these, I really like it, because when I do performance in the city, I see myself as part of the city. I don't see myself as something special. Oh, I'm the artist, there is the city. No, it's just like we are all together, and I embrace everything that can happen within this environment. So for me, from the skirt to the trees, it was a big jump artistically, and also understanding things. And now the next was from the trees to the woods. So I think from the trees to the woods, the idea of landscape, it's much more strong now. And also this landscape that is not still, but there is movements, as with the nature has movements, this landscape has movements as well. People go up and down, and we really try to take over the space, because with the trees is a bit like, you know, when you plant random trees in the sidewalks of the city, that is very convenient for the human beings to walk through. And with the woods we have this idea of, yeah, now we want to take over, like to be a bit more wild into the relationship with the space in the city, and also promoting more movements within these woods.
Because in a wood full of trees, that space belongs to the trees, and the humans have to tread carefully wherever they go. So it's like you've replicated that with the performers.
Yeah.
And the other very interesting thing is to hear from you how practice led to the piece developing. Actually, staging and performing is an integral part of the dynamic of the whole piece, and changes it.
Yes, I'm very much a trying out person. I learn by doing it.
Yes.
I plan, I try, I learn, I replan, I try, I learn. I really like to learn from experience. So I think all this experience from before brought me to woods. And also woods, there is this idea of collective, is like the collective of trees, or collective of nature. So this idea of collective work doing with local people, for me, is very important as well. Is another side of this work.
Are they? Have all the performers been women or not?
No,
Okay.
it's open to all the genders. And what I also like, it's because of the skirts. There is this anonymously, that we don't actually, when we are doing the performance, we cannot see who is what or who is who, because you just see the legs and you cannot recognize who is where. And this is also, like, for me, it touches a gender discussion that I really like, that we are just part of the same collective.
Yes.
And that we embrace all the genders into it.
You know, it kind of bypasses a gender discussion by just going past that borderline or barrier and just playing in that space.
Yeah.
So one thing that really struck me about the work that you've done, that I've seen, although I've only seen imagery, is very aesthetically striking. That skirt, those skirts, they're so beautiful, and they're like made in a very, the making of them is how they're different is very unobtrusive, in that when you're upside down, the underwear part is the top of the skirt, and it's integral to the whole look, and then the legs on the top. And there's a big attention to fabric, to texture, to a different, like, shininess. There's color, especially. There's so much playfulness, and a way you think about movement, where the movement is, there's a range of movement, and there's a very deliberate mixing of mundane and extraordinary, and fantasy, and the everyday as well.
Yeah.
And I liked it. So
Nice, thank you.
it was just so captivating to see that, and that's also very wild. That just slipping past those boundaries, and then you're in a space that's wide open to ideas and interpretation. I did have a question, which is about the role of beauty in your work. If you could say, if you're okay to say something about that.
No, it's totally fine. I think for the the making of the skirts, we were very much inspired, for example, from nature itself, and looking for these palettes that we could see in woods, and we made for woods these very long skirts, because then it that we could be more connected, because in the previous work the trees, the skirts were smaller, so that we wanted to get connected through the fabrics. And in the beginning we thought to have only plain fabrics, not flowers, not shiny, but together with the team that I work, they were like, yeah, but now we are missing the flowers. I said, okay, let's try. And then I tried with some, and also the choices for the fabrics, even the shiny one is very like a Brazilian carnival that brings up.
Yes, there's a real popular culture mixing with, you know, something very intellectual, mixing with something very like simple.
Yes.
And it's a very productive and freeing mixture.
Yes, and also the flower fabrics, for example, they are from a fabric that in Brazil is very common. It's called chitão. And then you see every, you know, the houses like, how you call it, when you put it on the table? Like,
the tablecloth.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's a cheap fabric, actually.
Yes.
And then we
but
also...
people, it would be popular because it's shiny and bright.
Exactly,
yes.
And then we have all these colors, so we wanted to make like very precise choices into it to create these together and really work with colors and palettes and texture. And it's actually not so, it's a bit, some people see this work a bit like pessimistic, because in the end everybody falls, because that's the body.
Well, that's life.
Exactly, that's also life. But I think the beauty plays this idea of, it's also the fail of, and the ends can also be beautiful. It's not like beautiful and ugly, or failure and success, or pessimist and optimist, but how we can have this kind of things that can stretch perceptions and things. So these I really like.
Lovely. So, what do you hope for as a result of this project being performed? What do you hope? Are there consequences that you hope are going to happen due to this performance?
I think this performance has two sides, and both of them are very important for me. That the first side is the participants, the people that apply to do the performance. And it's very beautiful to see how they bound after this experience. And we have been done in another cities before, Bristol, and it's beautiful to see how many different people get together because they feel so special by knowing to do this headstand thing. And they really bound. They becomes like friends that meets in places. So for me, this is very important to create an environment that everybody by doing an art project, they feel embraced, that they feel respected, and they actually make friends in this way. But then for the outcome, that is when we perform this, and then there is the audience there, and then there is people. And what I really like about this work is that, of course, some people may come just to see the performance, but a lot of people just pass by and just see, and they get also a bit like captured by this image, this thing, and it brings up a lot of questions all the time. All the experience I had is that people start to question, what is this? They have so many questions, and I really like the idea that a work can open up for different kind of readings. But of course, there is something that for me is very precious, that is the idea of bringing more awareness about environmental issues and things. So I think everything we do that can bring up awareness of the environmental things is very good.
Okay. You know, just listening to you, I think there's another aspect that must stay with the performers in that they now have ownership of that space in the city as well, I would have thought. And I know that you refer to the performances all through this time since 2009 as planting. So do you want to say something about that?
Yes, I think this is a word that for me maybe is not the best now, because planting, I think there is this idea of it's something that the humans do. And now I understand nature as something that we are. You know, we are not separate from it. It's not the trees and me. We are one whole thing all together. So it's not that I'm man or I'm woman, I plant a tree. No, I am a tree. I am this grass, I am this earth. And I think this is something that from the past years I start to understand better, as that nature is not something separate from me. It's something that I am, and I'm responsible for it as well. And I think this is also some things that I learned a lot out of a lot of philosophers that are popping up in Brazil, finally, that they are from indigenous background. And the relationship with earth is totally different from the relationship I have or I had. So I think it's a big learning thing that to understand this as part of us and not something so separated.
I expect it's something that has been and will be continuously feeding into your practice and how the work develops as it lives and moves into the future, I guess.
Yes, so, my work, my life.
Yeah.
Because it's really another way of thinking, and I truly believe that's the future, because they are doing this for so many years, and for so many years we are ignoring it. We are colonizing them, we are doing so many things to them, and they are just still there teaching so much to us about how to take care of the earth.
I think if it doesn't move into the future, then we don't have a future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Indigenous communities are the communities whose land has been taken from them and all the resources stripped out of that land for profit.
Yes.
So they are on the cutting edge of environmental damage. It affects them first. And if there are no stops put on the exploitation of the world, the earth, the soil, the air, it will overwhelm humanity as a whole, and that's not too far away, we believe now. Because I remember in the 70s was when people, it was commonly talked about, environmental degradation. But there's a famous book, Silent Spring, which I think was the first popular text to talk about what insecticides are doing to the biosphere, and that's from the 60s. So we've spent, I can't even do the maths, 60s, 40, so 60 years ignoring the problem, and it's at our doorstep right now. But Indigenous rights is a very political subject, and as well as being in danger because of the process of environmental spoilage, they're also politically so vulnerable. People are murdered. It's a dangerous subject. So my question was if this has ever affected the practice that you do, because you can't talk about the environment, I think, without talking about the people at the forefront of risk.
Totally. No, I understood. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yes, and if I talk from the Brazilian perspective, it's so curious that we now are saying, well, now is knocking on our door, the environmental issues, but for them it's happening for so many years, for so long, and in Brazil the situation is very hard for them. It's all about taking the lands, it's very dangerous. Actually, I just heard that in Brazil is the fourth country more danger for activist people because they get murdered, because they try to speak up and people doesn't want them to speak up, so they kill them. So I think this is a very important point for us when we talk about environment, for who are, to understand which people are we talking about. Is just us, or is it everybody? And
Okay, who is us?
exactly, exactly. It's me, artist, or it's me, a white woman, or it's me, a woman, or what is this? What are we talking about? And then what is happening for a very long time, and how we can relate it to it and make change that doesn't benefit, that benefits everybody actually.
It has to, doesn't it?
Exactly.
It has to. Okay. This is the last question, and right, I probably have to read it. Okay. What is the significance of cultural organisations like IBT trying to raise awareness around environmental concerns?
I think everything we can do to bring up awareness about environmental concern is a great thing that we have to do nowadays. So I think this initiative is great, and we just have to do it more and more and more. I have this thing, I was talking with a friend that was like, why we do art? And I was like, yeah, art is not special. It's not that, I think this whole celebrity thing is very bad. Art is not special. Art is essential as all the other things, as education, as healthy, as all the other stuff. So it's like how we can work in a society as a whole to promote things that's gonna look for the planet, that's gonna look for, and the planet is us. To think that the planet is not something separate from us. It's like, how can we look after us actually, but as a community that's integrated with everything that's here.
Yes, as we are part of the whole biosphere, we are just a segment of it.
Yeah.
We can't exist without it, so why do we imagine that we are above it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Clarice, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very inspiring to talk with
thank you.